Welcome, friends, it's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
The time is 1973. The place is right here on Earth. Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Astonishingly different from what you experienced in Planet of the Apes and beneath the Planet of the Apes. The escape. The birth of an infant who could threaten man's very existence.
Zero. I want that baby. If he won't give it to me, I'll shoot.
Why was Washington thrown into a turmoil by this one baby?
Stop him!
Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
Welcome to a movie film commentary track. My name is Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Brian, 10 years ago, you and I sat down and recorded our very first commentary track on this show. Can you believe that?
No. Wow, 10 years ago? Wow.
10 years ago. And it was for the very first Planet of the Apes.
Yep. Wow.
And I have to say, back then, I was like, well, all I can expect is to talk through this one Planet of the Apes movie with Brian. That's all he will put up with. and I'll be grateful for what I get. And so the fact that 10 years later, we're now doing our fourth Apes movie.
Yeah.
Makes me happy, I got to say.
Well, no, I have to ask, was that in anticipation of one of the newer Ape movies coming out?
It was, yeah. We were,
Okay.
that was, I was visiting you.
Uh-huh.
And Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was about to come out.
Okay.
I said, well, this seems like an appropriate time. And of course, Planet of the Apes is not a movie I need much prodding to talk about.
I mean, this is is it your favorite movie of all time? I know it's one of them, of course, but is it
The
your
original Apes is my favorite movie of all time. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I'm really excited to dive into this, because this is one, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. I've never seen this one. And
Wow.
so
So first time you watched it was in prep of this track.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, well, I can't wait to pick Zachy's brain about this. That's my role in these Apes commentaries.
You're like Jimmy in the Mr. Wizard show,
Right.
Well, golly, Mr. Wizard, what happens to the oxygen?
Well,
Jimmy, I'm glad you asked. Yeah.
Don't touch that. Yeah. Have you seen those SNL sketches where they do the parodies of
Yeah, it was it like Phil Hartman? Oh, you mean the Mr. Science, like the new ones?
Yeah, they do it like they've done like several of them with different
Adam Driver and Sam Rockwell, right?
Yeah, and-
the Science Room.
Yeah, and he's always getting angry at the kids.
Oh, so fun. It's the same. It's always Mikey Day and Cecily Strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so funny.
So good.
Well, we're not here to talk about those.
No, that's another commentary.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. Just the various Science Room sketches on SNL. We'll get there. No, we're here to talk about Escape from the Planet of the Apes, the third film in the Apes series. This one was released in 1971. And if I'm being honest, Brian, I gotta say, I've been excited all day to talk through this movie with you.
Oh, great. Well, me too.
So this will be a fun one. We are, of course, the real world context is for the sake of time. We are speaking in the lead up to the release of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and whenever a new Apes film comes out, we find reason to talk through one of the older ones. And boy, I'll tell you, we're now up to 3, so we may end up, finishing out the original 5 film cycle, which would never have occurred to me 10 years ago.
No, I hope so. I mean, I don't need the excuse, but I want to complete this series now for sure.
We're in it now. We're in it. We're more than halfway in now. So,
Yep.
So we're gonna go ahead and get queued up. If you folks want to watch along with us and hear me prattle on about this franchise, then go ahead and do that. We're gonna take a short break. Let our sponsors do their thing. We'll be back right after this. And we are back and ready to go. I'm queued up. What about you, Brian?
I'm ready.
All right. So we'll do the usual thing. We will hit play on three. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, play. And like I said, if you want to watch along with us, you can. If not, that's okay. We'll try to keep the conversation interesting. Nice thing, there's only one cut of Escape from the Planet of the Apes, and it's the one we're about to watch. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, play.
All right. We don't get a 20th Century Fox spotlight.
Not
card.
for any of the sequels. Only the first one has it.
I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I think Fox is just going through a period where they were like, yeah, we don't need that.
Did it feel bold?
Possibly.
You know, like, yeah.
Now, this here, by the way, this is Point Doom, where they shot this, which is, of course, where they shot the ending of the original film. So a little bit of lineage connecting, but also it's easy because it was right in Fox's backyard.
I've been meaning to take you there. I think about it almost every time you visit, like some sort of pilgrimage. I've got to take you there.
We need to go.
Yeah.
So that the model there of the ship, it was a big plywood mock-up. It's the same one from the first film and the second film.
Oh wow.
Bill Creeber, the production designer, had made it for the first film, and boy, they got some mileage out of it. And it ended up after this film, it showed up one more time in the pilot episode of. Oh, that's James B. Sicking right there on the screen.
Who's
from Doogie Howser? He's the dad.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you remember, by the way? This is complete. Sorry, tangent.
Let me just finish the thought.
Yeah.
So it was in the pilot episode of the Planet of the Apes TV series.
He was.
The
ship.
The ship was.
Yeah. The ship. Real fast. This is sorry. I'm wasting our time on this. Doogie Howser. Do you remember that like a special episode where Mother Earth, like Doogie was treating Mother Earth, played by Bette Midler, and then E.T. shows up?
No.
Okay, this came up in my algorithm on Instagram, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Anyway, I do love the opening of this though, because you cut to iconography location that is very familiar to us, but then you see a helicopter go by. So it's sort of, you're not sure what time period, what era you're in, and then you're like, oh, we're in our time period. Yeah.
So a sudden tonal shift. The original plan was for this movie to start from the interior of a spaceship and kind of a POV. You see the Earth being destroyed, from the perspective of the apes in the ship. But they wisely decided to cut that out before shooting, save some money. I don't think it was necessary. I actually think the way the movie starts is better.
Yeah, some mystery.
Yeah, I think by virtue of the ship, we recognize the ship as Taylor and company ship from the first film, and then it is. I mean, obviously, if you know what the movie is about, you can intuit that these are in fact apenauts. But it's a nice moment when those helmets come off.
Yeah. So wait, can you bring us up to speed? I mean, what? Yeah, Earth was destroyed.
Earth was destroyed
at the last film, right? But do we see these apenauts take off?
We don't. So we as the audience are required to backfill the backstory in order to get here. So in other words, this is reflective of the fact that there were no plans to go past the end of the second movie.
Now that was mostly because of Charlton Heston, right? That was his request.
It was a Heston idea because they were struggling with the ending. He's like, hey, why don't we just blow the joint up? And he was like, this way I don't have to do any more sequels. Now, what's interesting is Richard Zanuck, who was the head of 20th Century Fox at the time, was like, well, obviously you can't do that. And then during the course of the production of that film, he was kicked out. It was a coup orchestrated by his father. So there was some Game of Thrones shit happening over there. And so at that point, he's on his way out. He's like, you know what? Just blow it up. Whatever. I don't care. And so they did. And Beneath the Planet of the Apes cost half of what the original film did. So that the original film cost $6 million. Beneath cost a little over $2.5 million. And it made a profit relative to how much it cost, even though it made less than the first one. And so, wouldn't you know it, they say, hey, we need to make more. Paul Dane, who wrote the film, who wrote Beneath, he got a telegram from Arthur P. Jacobs saying basically, Apes is alive, sequel is required. And they had to somehow come up with an idea. Roddy McDowall right here, first time getting star billing in this franchise. He was not in the previous film. He came back for this one. and he ended up becoming really the face of the franchise, the ape face of the franchise,
Mm-hmm.
for the remainder of its live action life in its original span.
Mm-hmm.
I think his role as Cornelius in this one obviously is meteor, but even more so after this one, the next two he got to play the son of Cornelius and Zira, and that of course, he played Caesar, which led the way for the Andy Serkis version later.
Okay. I mean, considering the ending of this, I was wondering where in the world we go from here.
Yeah.
Love the music here, by the way. This music is funky.
It really is, and it's so funny because Jerry Goldsmith, he didn't do the second film, and I think his absence was felt. He came back for this one, and rather than even attempt to revive the tonal motifs in the first one, he just did something completely different. It is very 1971.
Yeah. I dig it though. I thought it was kind of cool. It was a little unexpected.
Yes.
But it did also make me think about, I was trying to imagine what a modern score is like now, meaning not like orchestral, but if we score it with music that we're just conditioned to understand, like, yeah, this sounds like music right now, and what that might sound like to ears 50, 60 years later.
Now, the budget for this one was basically half of the budget for the previous one. So now at this point, we're looking at, about $1.5 million, give or take.
Wow.
And obviously, I mean, even back then, that was like chump change. But
sure,
I think this movie benefits by the fact that very smartly, Paul Dane and everybody recognizes, well, look, man, we don't have the money. We can't even play in the same neighborhood as the first film.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get 3 ape characters, really 2 ape characters and 1 ape cameo. And so you're not as aware of the low budget, and there's a few, there's a few moments where you're like, okay, well, that looks like they didn't have money. But on the whole, it works within the framework they've created.
Yeah, because it's just.
By the way, real quick, that actor on the right, that is the late M. Emmett Walsh.
Yeah, I immediately his voice. I recognized his voice before his face.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's genius. So instead of having 50 people in ape costumes, you have 2 people dressed up like apes running around Los Angeles. So it's like just so much less you have to do.
Yeah.
This is also funny though. I mean, because we know these characters obviously, but as they've been put into holding here, and the soldiers are looking at them, and they're just very human-like in the way that they're taking off their spacesuits, and then when they hand them the orange, they're like, "Oh, great!" and they put it on a plate and have a knife and fork.
That's right.
I almost wish they had played up the human reaction even more than they did. Sort of like, "Wait, what am I looking at?"
It is interesting because the movie starts as kind of like a fish out of water comedy, and it lulls you into sort of like expecting that it's going to be a little bit more lighthearted and comedic, and then boy, it punches you in the gut, like maybe halfway through, right up until the end.
Absolutely. I have to say, I must admit, I watched it in 2 parts, which I didn't choose to do. If I can avoid that, I always try to avoid that. But I do feel like it affected me a little bit, because when I finished the first part, or when I fell asleep, I should say, because it was late, not the movie. I was like, I feel like I'm watching a comedy, right? And so then when I started it back up and it got all heavy toward the end, I was like, oh. And then I thought about the film a little bit and appreciated the tale that it was telling.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one that I remember as a kid. I wasn't crazy about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because, well, it's not like, the one I like, it's, I want like the whole Planet of Apes, and, I want like a human protagonist and whatnot, and then definitely, as I don't even know how many times I've watched this, when I watch the apes, inevitably when I watch the first apes, it's like, well, I have to go through all the rest of them, and my kids know it and everything. But I appreciate it so much more as an adult, and it is without question, of the first 5, my second favorite out of all of them.
Oh, wow. I can see that though as a kid, because it's not really an adventure. This movie.
That's right.
I mean, this is really a story about human nature.
Very much so. Yeah.
But should we talk
Yeah.
about the plot? Because I'm assuming some people probably have not seen this, so maybe we should sort of track the story as it's happening.
Yeah, well, and before we even do that, when I mentioned the low budget, one of those examples is the guy in the gorilla suit,
Yeah.
which is very obviously a guy in a gorilla suit. And we say, oh, well, that looks cheesy, but there's also, given what the gorilla is expected to do in like in a couple minutes, well, probably that was the only thing you could do. But yes, we this film picks up with Cornelius and Zira, and for a few minutes anyway, Milo, the chimpanzee scientist, and what we intuit is that they found the remains of Charlton Heston's ship from the first film, repaired it, and took off just before the Earth ceased to exist at the end of the previous one.
Mm-hmm. In the future.
In the future, so in the year 3955 per the second film, in the year 3978 per the first film, and they're propelled back in time through the same time warp that propelled Chuck Heston forward, and so here we are. And when you think about it, I mean, given the narrative constraints that existed, it's rather remarkable the way they came up with to carry the story forward.
Yeah, for all of the factors that we mentioned. I mean, it makes sense story-wise, but also budget-wise.
Yeah.
But it's also something, it's not a concession. It's interesting to see then, well, that's what I think I came to appreciate afterwards. Like, this is kind of a genius idea of a sequel where, well, let's flip it. What if we put our ape heroes into Taylor's situation?
Right. Yeah, and I think it helps, obviously, that, we came to know Cornelius and Zira through the previous two films. We already had an affinity for them, and so that work has already been done.
Sure.
And by virtue of that, as we see them go through, the events that they experience in this film, I mean, your heart goes out to them. It can't help but go out to them.
Yeah, because we know they're kind.
Exactly, right? We know they are kind, not they're kind.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Bradford Dillman, who is kind of the human Cornelius in essence, as Lewis. Natalie Trundy as Stevie. Natalie Trundy was the wife of Arthur P. Jacobs, the film's producer. And in the previous film, she played the human mutant Albina. And then in the next two films, she plays Lisa, the wife of Caesar. So she ends up appearing in four of these five films.
I saw that in the trivia that she was in all the films, but I was not understanding how she could have been in the last one. So I get it now. So what did you think about the character Milo, him being disposed of so early? I mean, what do you think the thinking was behind that?
Well, I think that he serves a necessary function in the plot of the film because he sort of, I mean, he is kind of Basil exposition, right?
Sure.
And by virtue of him essentially saying, I know what happened. We were here, now we're here. It's him essentially turning the audience, being like, everybody got that?
Right.
And given what we know about Cornelius and Zira, that's not a knowledge base that they would have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you understand his presence in the film. You also understand why, by removing him from the board, it makes things more challenging for Cornelius and Zira, because Milo is the one who's like, keep your cards close to your chest.
Sure.
Right. Also, Sal Mineo, who played Milo, he was in Rebel Without a Cause before this. He hated the ape makeup, so he was very happy to be done.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's really sad. I was reading about Sal Mineo. He died just a couple of years after this film. He was stabbed in a mugging.
What?
Yeah, really sad. Just 37 years old,
Oh, wow. That's terrible.
Yeah.
This is great.
So this is very much an inversion of a similar sequence in the book, in Pierre Boulle's book, where you have the equivalent of the Heston character kind of doing something similar, where he's trying to prove to the apes he's intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that Dane, when he was given the assignment, he consulted with Pierre Boulle and to try to give the project a little bit of the satire and That was present in the book, and I think definitely, including the where they testify in front of the presidential commission, very similar to what's in the book.
Hmm.
Where you later on you have Zira saying, we're peaceful, can we be unchained, and that's the equivalent of the Taylor character. His name is Meru. He says that in the book.
Mm-hmm. So there's a series of books, right?
Just one book.
Oh, there's only one book.
Just one book. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, well, then I guess I have nothing to say. I was going to say, do the stories mirror the direction of the films? But I guess not.
Yeah. Well, the first film, it takes inspiration from the book, but I would say it goes off in its own direction.
Okay. That's cool that he was consulted, though, on these things to sort of keep it in his, I don't even call it voice, but perspective, whatever he was trying to say through those stories.
I have to say, I don't even know if Poole gets a credit on the newer films. But certainly with all of these films, it was, based on a concept created by Pierre Boulle.
And isn't it amazing? I mean, what was the first one? 68? Something like that?
Yeah.
And here we are in 2024 getting another Planet of the Apes movie.
And that's the thing, it's like, what is it about this franchise that lives,
Mm-hmm.
Why does it speak to people? It's I think it's a shorthand that people understand. And I think it discusses themes that we all understand on some level.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, so this right here, right? I mean, this is the thing about this movie. So many times you watch it and you're like, it's like, oh, if you had only not done that. Oh, if only you hadn't done that.
Right.
Like in this situation, if Zira would have kept her powder dry, Milo would probably still be alive,
Right.
And I think that's a good film if it makes you, oh God, if you hadn't, oh, why'd you do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny though, where they're trying to, keep their cards close to the chest, right? About what they're capable of. But I know I would find it difficult. I would just want to speak,
Yeah. Right.
It'd be hard. It'd be hard to pretend.
This is a very G-rated way of showing the life draining out of a chimpanzee.
Almost like the joke, with like a sex scene where it's like a train going through a tunnel and, all the visual.
Well, I think of Frank Grimes when he grabs the electric thing and then we just cut to the funeral.
Yes. But here we're getting all the animals in the zoo sort of yelping out in a collective animal, howling of like, no, an animal has died. Yeah. I'll admit I didn't follow it immediately. I was sort of like, when I saw him wheeled out, I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got some hard moments for a G-rated film. A bunch of deaths, and I mean, certainly the ending is really rough.
Yeah, and yet, it's all of these films have dark endings.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why and I've known and loved this series all my life, and that's why I'm always like, you got to give kids credit. Like, not to say you need to like rejoice in death and darkness, but if you present these themes, they'll get what you're doing.
I think that's the important thing. It's not darkness or a down ending for the sake of having a down ending. Like, whoa, didn't I just blow your mind? Like they're like parables or something, like warnings, right? And then the darkness is like, if you don't think about this, could lead to that.
Yeah.
So I do think, I agree with you. I think those sorts of things are valuable. Those stories.
I mean, certainly with this film, I remember watching it many years ago with one of my kids who was little, and he says, why are they being so mean to Cornelius and Zira? If they were nice to them, maybe the apes wouldn't take over, And this is a little kid saying this,
Yeah.
And I'm always like, well, if that's if you're getting that takeaway, then it's working.
Yeah.
It's doing what it's supposed to, right?
Please don't lose that.
Right? Yeah.
if everybody felt that way.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, in many ways, you and I have talked about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and there's the shot at the end of that film where Jason Clarke and Andy Serkis, they put their heads together, kind of, mournfully, and it's near the end, and Matt Reeves, who directed the film, he said that was the moment. That was when it could have been the Planet of the Apes and the Men. But for the prejudice on both sides, right? And I look at this film as comparable in that regard. This was the moment where it could have been the Planet of Apes and Men. But it's just we're beholden to our worst instincts, unfortunately.
Yeah.
This is William Wyndham as the president, and you talk about somebody who came off the movie president assembly line.
Totally.
He's got a haircut you can set your watch to, Brian.
That's so funny.
But I really like William Wyndham as the president in this. He's given a certain amount of complexity.
He's like a guy I would certainly love to our real life presidents to be somewhat like.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the way that he considers and thinks and is trying to be even-handed,
Yeah, exactly. So by virtue of when this film is set, it gives us a sense of like, okay, so Taylor was launched 2 years earlier, Brent was launched 1 year earlier, and that sets kind of the time frame for where we're at. Now, I should mention that when I saw this film the first time, I had not seen Beneath. I had not seen the second one.
Wow.
I was on a bit of a quest for several years trying to track it down. Like now, people listening now are gonna be like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, there was a time when you just couldn't find a movie.
Yeah, you'd go into Blockbuster, and if you were looking for some movie from 1972, it might not be there.
That's right. Yeah. And you're just like, well, what do you do? And I remember this was in Saudi Arabia. I had seen the cartoon show first. I saw that in fall of '87, and it took about 2-3 years to find a copy of the film. Somebody who knew I had been wanting to see it. It aired on their TV in their compound. This is in Saudi Arabia, and so they taped it for me. And they're like, and it was like that and Escape from the Planet of the Apes together. So I saw them both. I was just happy as a pig in shit. I was, like 9 or 10 at the time, but it was, I loved that first film so much.
Yeah.
Right from the start, but I had this gap between movie 1 and movie 2, and I had to intuit what happens in the second film. It's like, well, the world blew up. We know that.
Right.
It's a big thing to have to talk past,
On that note, actually, I was noticing that this movie is very dialogue heavy. I mean, there's a lot of, so. and not in a negative way, but there's a lot of exposition. There's a lot of, thinking and considering and weighing, morality and whatever. Like it's all through dialogue, and you really do have to listen.
That's
this
right.
film. I think a lot of times now movies, certainly these big blockbusters, they do so well all over the world because they're so visual, and you can pretty much intuit the story just by watching it. But I was appreciating the screenplay for this movie.
I think Paul Dane is a remarkably literate writer, and it's no small feat to step into the shoes of Rod Serling. But just as Serling and Michael Wilson gave very, very literary credibility to the first film, I think Dane was able to carry that forward with the sequels, and definitely, in my opinion, this is the best written of all of the sequels because of exactly what you're describing. I mean, there's a real attempt to grapple with the big issues that are being discussed. And it's gratifying to hear that. I enjoy hearing good actors speak intelligent dialogue.
Agreed. It's like exercise for my mind.
Yeah, because that's exactly it. Yeah,
right. I mean, I was thinking that I was having to watch it a little differently than I am used to with other movies, and I found myself enjoying that. Like I felt like I was paying attention, greater attention to the dialogue in this than I might something else I was casually watching on TV.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
By the way, the chairman here, John Randolph.
John Randolph, the original Frank Costanza.
Stop.
On Seinfeld, like before they cast Jerry Stiller, it was John Randolph.
Wow. I mean, very, very different, right?
Very different. Yeah, I believe he was in 1, maybe 2 episodes, but those have been reshot now. So like in syndication, you only see the Jerry Stiller scenes.
Really? Wait, when were they reshot? I mean, during those seasons?
During I think before it went into syndication.
Wow. So they went back.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Sort of George Lucas did.
Yeah, they did exactly.
Wow. Okay. Well, I was going to say I know him as Clark Griswold's dad
from Christmas Vacation. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
A little help from Jack Daniels.
That's right. He's also the captain of the ship in the King Kong remake a couple of years after this.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
The Dino De Laurentiis one.
Yeah. But this, there's something. I say this a lot, and I think it's why I really, really respond to Spielberg movies, especially the 80s ones, is I love things that feel of this world, but there's like magic involved. So it's like, magic in your backyard is what I always like to call it. And there's something about this scene, this like inquiry or whatever, and seeing these two, I mean, I was going to call them aliens. They're not aliens, but these two humanoid apes speaking eloquent English who came from a spaceship, and like, what would that look like in modern times? Questioning them.
Yeah.
What would you ask them? How would they respond? I mean, there's just something so understandable and at the same time fantastical about it. And I think there's something that's just, that's just irresistible.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and the great thing is, Dr. Hassline on the left there, played by Eric Braeden, who ends up as the heavy of the piece. Certainly doesn't start out that way.
Yeah.
And worth mentioning, by the way, Hassline is mentioned in the previous 2 films because he's the scientist who came up with the concept of traveling fast enough to break the time barrier. So he's given a name check in the previous 2 films. But what I love is that he is the hero of his movie.
Yes.
Right? Like when you look at it from his perspective, he's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, he's the equivalent of Dr. Zaius in the first film, who is the hero of his movie.
Right.
And I think Eric Braeden is fantastic in this movie. He's complex. He brings nuance to the character. I mean, he's a bad guy, and when he gets his at the end, you're like, good, F that guy.
Sure.
But he brings remarkable nuance to this. And that actor, by the way, he's John Jacob Astor in Titanic. He's in like soap operas and stuff to this day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But for me, he'll always be Dr. Hassline,
Yeah.
What's interesting, by the way, when it came to Hassline, some of the other actors they considered, you had like Murray Hamilton and Leslie Nielsen and like, Hal Holbrook, even William Wyndham, who plays the president. And I'm like, I can imagine every single one of those.
Sure.
And certainly Leslie Nielsen, none of them would have brought the complexity that Eric Braeden brings.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Yeah. And time,
like Leslie Nielsen,
yes,
he would have been a straight up heel from the start.
Yes. A little too stiff.
Yeah.
A stiff shirt. This guy feels curious.
Yes.
And contemplative.
Yeah. And I think that's really the essential ingredient,
Yeah. It's funny too. I mean, the whole argument. Well, what his motivation here for people who haven't seen this is we learn through the apes' testimony that the Earth is doomed. Humans are doomed, right?
Yes.
At some point, and so it's like, well, should we do something about this? Is there a way to prevent this? Like we learned that she accidentally, Zira let slip here that she's dissected humans.
Right.
And I love that it cuts to him and he's like, excuse me? Like
Right.
he doesn't say anything, but he gives a look where other people seem to have not caught that. But he's like,
he's the only one who caught it. Yep.
That's the thing that got incepted into his mind or whatever. The idea that he can't let go, and it informs the way that he feels about them the rest of the movie. But I love that the argument comes up later about killing Hitler as a man versus killing Hitler as a child. You know? And it also made me wonder, how long has that thought experiment been around? Like, has that been around for, not that I thought we invented it or anything, but it's just like, I mean, ever since Hitler's existence, has that been well, if I could go back in time,
like when Hitler was around, if only we'd killed him as a baby.
Yeah, made me wonder about the history of that.
Yeah,
that thought experiment.
Now, I remember watching this film for the first time as a kid, and you have the references to Taylor, and speaking of him in the past tense, and by you had not having seen the second one, I'm like able to intuit, well, Taylor is dead. And I have to say, this was probably my first time as a kid, like grappling with the idea of like, oh, like the character I liked is dead now, like the main character, which now we experience all the time, know, as a kid, like, oh no, like Taylor's gone,
Yeah. Did we have that moment yet where she's like, I loved him, and then it cuts to that flash of them kissing? Which is kind of funny out of context a little bit.
Out of context.
If you haven't seen the first movie, it's more like a innocent sort of But here it looks almost like she had some sort of romantic interlude with him.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the interesting thing is, in this particular segment, we're just talking about, where we come from, humans were treated like animals, and the recognition that Louis and Stevie have as vets that, that's how we treat animals.
Yes.
We try to be kind to them, but, and yet that's a complexity that people beyond them don't understand.
Right. Right. Yeah. I want to ask, so within the Planet of the Apes fandom, where does this movie lie with people generally?
That's a good question. My sense, generally speaking, is that this is considered either the second or third best of the 5 films. I think we can intuit everybody puts the first one at the top of the heap. And then it's how do you rank the rest? And most people put either Escape or Conquest as the first among the rest. And then they put either Beneath or Battle as the last.
Okay.
I personally, I really like this one, but I think the next one is pretty solid too. And that's the one with the ape revolt, where, it's set about 10 years on from this one. Or 20. It's about 20 years after this one.
Does that one begin with apes being sort of pushed around on the steps of a building?
Right. Yeah, they shot that at Century City Mall.
Yes, I remember that. Maybe it was on TV, and you and I were watching part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
This sequence here, I'll tell you. You talk about descriptions of time travel that at least for me, it was like, oh, I'm going to file this away in my mental Rolodex forever, because. From a young age, I was like, no, it's like a highway with an infinite number of lanes, and you go, it's like, I was like, that is absolutely perfect,
Yep. And
this right here, infinite regression, the painter painting a picture of the landscape while painting a picture of the painter taking a picture, the whole thing. I was like, nope, I get it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I like this. And I was thinking too, I think this was part of what I was saying earlier, where I really had to listen.
Right.
Because usually, I mean, even in Back to the Future, they do a brilliant job of explaining it, but it's so easy for me to see. He has the chalkboard, and he's like, and then time can branch, and da-da-da-da. You're like, oh, okay.
Right.
And this, you really have to listen. And there's something that I love about that. A movie that forces you to listen.
I mean, what's so interesting is that time travel as movies depict it, the idea of jumping back and forth in time, obviously that's a scientific, I mean, it can happen, right? And so what you have is different films or different franchises create their own uh explanations,
Mhm.
and I'm always like, that's as long as you're consistent within the rules you create, because it's all nonsense.
I know, it was funny. I mean, what was it? Endgame, where they have to like undo what the world knows about time travel, or
Yes.
thinks they understand because of Back to the Future. Like, I love that the movie had to take like 7 minutes of its running time to be like, no, it's not like the thing you are all thinking of right now. you know, and it's all nonsense anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, and what Hasline is describing, right? The idea that by changing lanes you change the future. I mean, he's essentially describing a multiverse,
Hmm.
because the idea is like, well, you jump into a lane and you change the future, but the past, the future that already existed is still on its own path.
Hmm.
It's just you're on a, again, sorry, am I losing you? It's like,
No, me, that's the one I followed. Actually, the painter
Yeah.
one, I don't. That was the one where I actually, I guess I'm more admitting now that I was like, what? Like, I really need to be listening.
yeah, it's definitely, it's one of those things where the idea of infinite regression, what he's describing, is like observing the flow of time.
Uh-huh.
That because we exist within time, we're only seeing it from one point of view.
Yeah.
So it's like if you were to take a step backward and look at yourself in the time stream, you would see past and future.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Which, by
it's
the
like,
way, sorry, this made me think of when you and I went to that award show. It was at this hotel.
it was at this hotel, right?
Yeah, Beverly.
I was thinking that. I was like, I think we were there. Yeah.
Yeah.
How funny.
Sorry. I just had to point that out.
We were in that lobby.
Yeah. What was the Hollywood Critics Association award?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. This, I have to admit, though, I mean, especially living in the city, recognizing things, I spark up in a certain way. But having this Planet of the Apes movie suddenly pass the Brown Derby and be in Beverly Hills, and I was like, wait a minute. Like, it just sort of made me enjoy it on a whole other, like, oh, this is kind of funny. Like, I mean, I think the movie knows this is funny. Them going into this big suite, hotel suite, and it's just, right, the juxtaposition of it all is just inherently funny, and it's interesting, and then eventually they're throwing dinner parties, and like, it's just
that's a really good point, right? Because the world that the first two films created, the apes seem of a piece with it, so we don't really question it. And the film, it's a big ask to put the apes in Beverly Hills and say, no, this is still serious.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing.
Right?
I don't think it's not making me laugh at the movie. It's making me chuckle with the film. Like, I think the film knows, like, isn't this kind of funny? Like, he's putting on a suit and she's putting on this new dress and she feels pretty and she twirls for him.
Exactly, right? And it's one of those things where it has to take you just far enough without breaking the reality of the film. And that's a delicate dance,
And that's why I think this is such a brilliant sequel idea. I mean, this is the first movie inversed.
That's right.
Yeah. Look,
yeah.
It's so cute. They're such a cute couple.
Well, that's really it, right? Like, I mean, it's a rom-com.
Yeah.
Where they die at the end.
I know. Oh my gosh, it gets so heavy.
It's really like, and that's the thing. I mean, like that moment in particular, when she's kind of putting her hands together and looking at him. And I remember the first time I watched this with Amina, she said the same thing. Oh, they're so cute, And I knowing like where this is in, I'm like, yeah. I'm like rubbing my hands together. Oh, you're about to get gut punched,
Look at how cute she is there. She's she's so, I love it.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, that's what this film is saying. Like, it's like a fork in the road,
And what's interesting too, that's different from the first one, is immediately Taylor is treated like crap, And,
that's right.
And he goes through hell and has to escape it. But here, they're like, oh, isn't life on Earth nice? Well, always on Earth, but life in the humans' time nice. But then, of course, then it all unravels.
Yeah, and so this very much echoes the book, as I was saying, because initially the human character is feted by the apes and sort of treated like a celebrity, and then things take a turn. So very
Mm,
much echoing, which just makes sense, right? Because the first movie, uh, took a different path from the book, so those narrative beats were available to be
hmm.
adapted.
Right. I love this grape juice plus. Giving her wine, I should say. What's this? It's like grape juice plus.
Grape juice plus. And there's Cornelius with the ascot.
Yes. Yes.
We got to bring back the ascot. I feel like I don't know, Brian, get that going.
Okay. It'd be kind of funny if they got invited to the Playboy Mansion. Just like I don't know,
Yep.
in the ascot and the smoking jacket and all that makes me think of Hugh Hefner. Yeah, they're talking
Yeah, I
about like
think
Disneyland, and he's going to dedicate the new Jungle Cruise boat.
right.
Funny. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, it's I remember in the previous film, but the budgetary limitations meant that for the big ape crowd scenes, they couldn't all have the benefit of John Chambers' makeup appliances, and so only the key apes got that. And this film was able to jump past that by, well, we got two apes,
Mm-hmm.
and they got the makeup, and the makeup is still very impressive. These many years later.
I think so. I
Um,
mean, the only limitation is the mouth, but
yes,
like their eyes are so expressive. Like
yes,
when they're smiling at one another, winking. She winks earlier. Like it's that covers all of the little flaws. I think they
yes.
just they feel so. I don't think of them as masks. They feel lived in.
Yeah.
The faces.
Yeah, and the way in which Chambers, came up with the effect is remarkable because it's different pieces, right? So
Mhm.
it's not, you're not just throwing something over your face. There's like a forehead piece, there's that goes down the nose, and then there's the cheek part and lower jaw, and so it allows you to retain facial mobility, right?
Mhm.
And it's the way he came up with it, it was what they were able to use throughout the films. They used it on the television series, and to a large extent, I mean, Rick Baker has talked about how he was inspired by Planet of the Apes, and what we see now with the motion capture, to me anyway, it's a natural progression,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is finding a way for the actor
Yes.
to be performing.
Yes, that's a great point.
I'm sure you know this, but for people listening, John Chambers, who designed the ape makeup, he won an honorary Academy Award for his work on the first film. He's played in the film Argo by John Goodman.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. I
Uh,
remember that because of you. Yeah.
yeah, which I was tickled by that because I already knew who John Chambers was, going into that film.
Hmm.
But like, hopefully, that movie brought a new awareness to him.
Yeah. I love all this. I don't know if I'd call it a montage, but them being sort of courted by
Yes.
society, and you have Zira at sort of like this feminist kind of meeting. Like I love that she's speaking too. It's not like she's listening and clapping, but she's getting to
Mhm.
speak her mind. Like let women
That's right.
not just use their hands, let them use their minds. And all the women love what she's saying. And then I love Cornelius at the boxing match, and he hates it.
Yep. Yep.
Like he finds it beastly. I was like,
Yep.
it's great.
Like he's not even human, and he's like, "Why are you guys treating each other like
Yeah,
this?"
yeah. And everyone's just cheering, and
Yep.
drinking beer and eating popcorn and watching people beat each other to a pulp. And he doesn't get it. He's like,
That's
why?
right.
Why would you do that?
This is apropos of nothing, but there's something about 1960s suits that I've always liked. They're just sharp. It's just like I'm
Yeah.
looking at Dr. Hassline. I'm like, that is a nice suit.
I thought it was nice when Mad Men came back and that sort
Yes,
of more fitted suit style came back.
that's right.
I agree with you. I think there's something sort of sharp and intentional about it all. I know for a while, like suits, the pants especially, were so baggy, sort of that '90s kind of thing. It felt like you're
Yes.
swimming in
Yep.
your suit pants.
Like zoot suits.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Without the cool shoulders.
Well, I think you and I have talked about this, but Pervez, who I used to co-host Diffuse Congruence with, one thing he said to me recently, he's like, have a tailored suit, have a custom made suit, have it in your closet. That's your suit. And I need to do that.
Yeah, I had sort of like a slapdash suit for many, many years. And then finally there were weddings and all sorts of things that I had to, and I was like, all right, fine. So I went out and got a suit that fit. And I can't tell you like how many people have commented on the pictures and you're like, oh yeah, I guess when you really do kind of go out and find something that really works for you, you do look a lot better.
Right?
Yeah. Feel better too.
So this is where Hassline starts gradually making his heel turn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting is Zira is describing for us the third person perspective of what we didn't get at the end of the previous film, which is what it looked like when the world ended.
Yes.
Which just as a matter of information, I think is helpful. Now, once again, he says, "What did the date meter read?" And she says 3950 something, and then the president later says 3955. And I've said this before. This is an error because in the first film, when Taylor exits the ship, the date meter says 3978. In the second film, the James Franciscus astronaut Brent, he says, "Oh, the date meter says 3955." But you could say, "Oh, well, something happened to his date. Like there's one of them is broken."
Right.
But Zira is in Taylor's ship, so that's a continuity error.
That's so interesting. I wonder why. I mean, these things happen, but it's such a key detail to this lore.
Just pull it up, double check it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
So this sequence right here, the president and Dr. Hassline talking to each other, probably my favorite dialogue scene in the whole movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm fascinated by this. I think as I said earlier, I think the president is presented as empathetic and thoughtful, but I think that Dr. Hassline is given depth, and I'm not in any way defending him, but I think our best villains are complicated.
Mm-hmm. His fears are understandable.
Yes. I mean, look at this. Herod tried that and Christ survived. He says, Herod lacked our facilities.
Yeah.
He's putting himself on Herod's side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what a fascinating thought experiment also, too. I mean, just to even to receive word somehow, no matter who it's from the future, that in like 2,000 years, the Earth will explode.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone, okay, I mean, even worse, humanity becomes subject to like apes or whatever, but like, and then the world blows up. And like, we won't be here for that.
That's right.
What's our duty? Doesn't he say that later, something where it's like he talks about like climate change and things. He's like, when are people going to start caring about this? Like,
we think we have all the time in the world.
Yes, exactly. And it's what a weird thing, because those are very real things we should be thinking about right now. But then to think of something even crazier like this, like, all right, 2,000 years, we know the world blows up. What can I do with that information right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the fascinating thing, right? Because Hassline obviously goes down a very dark road starting here and all the way until the end. But it's like, well, maybe just, accept the things that aren't under your control.
Mm-hmm.
And do the best you can to live a good life now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Maybe that's naive on my part.
No, I fall in the same camp as you, so I'll join you in that. But but even just the way that we treat, so now we have like ape representatives who presumably will somehow carry forward in some sort of way. And like, if we treat them with kindness and we develop like some sort of relationship with them,
right.
One would hope.
Well, in this film, that's the poles, if you will, represented by Dr. Hassline on one end of the spectrum, and Armando, the circus owner, played by Ricardo Montalban, on the other, where he says, "Look, if it's our destiny to be dominated, then then hopefully it's people like you."
It's so funny that I found that line kind of chilling. Weirdly, but also, there's some sort of, I don't know what you want to even call it. I don't know. There was just something about it that really, it clanged around in my head. Like, wow, what a thing to think about. And it's easy to say that now because he won't be there. But
that's right.
But there is sort of a, well, live and let live. The world's gonna. It's out of my control. It's out of my control.
I mean, yeah, certainly. I mean, on the one hand, you say, well, 2,000 years, cosmically speaking, that's a drop in the bucket. But at least in terms of the human lifespan, I mean, like you said, we're none of the, like the president says, well, as long as it's not in time for the next election,
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen will happen.
Yeah.
But the ironic thing that this film presents is Dr. Haslein's actions precipitate that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's by film's end, he has ensured that what he sought to prevent in the most cruel way possible has become an inevitability.
Right.
Right.
Fear.
Yeah, and again, I plot that juxtaposition with Dr. Zayas from those earlier films. I mean, it's the same thing, right? He's driven by fear because he knows what mankind has done in the past.
Yeah.
So if that means lobotomizing one of these astronauts, if that means doing whatever to Chuck Heston, then so be it, because he's trying to preserve his society.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for Hasline here. He's trying to preserve his society. Well, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cool little recording device he had earlier too, in that cigarette case.
Yeah, it's like a little James Bond type thing,
Yeah.
Which is appropriate. Paul Dane wrote Goldfinger.
Yeah, I saw that. That's cool.
Yeah.
What's funny, by the way? I was just thinking, like, wow, cool. I'd love to have something like that. But then I'm like, I literally do in my phone,
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and it's not going to run out of tape. It's not. The microphone's probably better.
I mean, it is funny that dude is just carrying around like a secret recorder that's disguised as a cigarette holder.
I know.
Like, just on the off chance that he, bumps into talking apes, I guess.
I know. Yeah. I was looking up just other ideas that were not used in the movie, but I guess there were some scenes with Cornelius playing golf. I just thought I love the idea. I mean, it's infinite. You could just think of how many funny things to put someone from that era into like our modern times, and it would be kind of funny to see.
Yeah. Yeah, the original title for this film was Secret of the Planet of the Apes. Which I like that as a title, but I think Escape works better given what's actually, what it's about. But I would assume the secret was referring to what Cornelius says here, which is laying out the backstory of how the ape planet came to be. Now, what's interesting is that per the original film, this is not known to anybody because the apes have been protected, from knowing their own history. But you can intuit, like, well, maybe by virtue of the fact that Cornelius is an archaeologist, and given what happens in the first film, maybe Dr. Zayas kind of like let him in on what happened. But what he describes is something that spans hundreds of years.
Right.
Where apes go from pets to slaves to eventual masters, right? The next film, which jumps 20 years only, essentially compresses hundreds of years of evolution into 2 decades.
Oh, okay. I mean, how far in the future is it? Well, no, you said 20 years. So, I mean,
yeah.
So they're retconning, you're saying? Or?
Well, as I see it, everything got accelerated by virtue of Cornelius and Zira coming into the past.
Brilliant.
So what would have taken
yes.
several hundreds of years ends up taking, a couple decades.
It's like Terminator lore, where you try to stop Judgment Day, but all you're doing is just pushing it around under different circumstances.
That's right.
Yeah.
But, that's the great thing about this concept is you have the ability to have stories span hundreds of years, because the poles are essentially the present day and 2,000 years, and you can just fill in those gaps, and that's kind of what the newer films are doing, Well,
can you speak to the lore? I mean, is it pretty consistent between the older films, the newer films, the books?
I think that consistent in terms of it being about a planet of apes. That's the one constant.
And
But
how we
how we get
arrive there. Yeah.
how we get there is vastly different, right? So the what I say is that the Caesar trilogy starring Andy Serkis, that evokes the fourth and fifth films of this cycle,
Mm-hmm.
right? So 4 and 5 in this movie series are about Caesar, which is Cornelius and Zira's son. So the reboot trilogy is a reinterpretation of those films.
Okay.
Very different, but echoes. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think, and this is like a cliche at this point, but you know, the Caesar trilogy is sort of like the Christopher Nolan version. You know,
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
you know, and that statement is itself kind of like hackneyed at this point. But you know, a little more grounded, trying to play it a little more realistic. Um, these films rely heavily on time travel, you know, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, it's more of like a kind of a soft reboot, you know,
Mm.
which is pretty brilliant when you think about it, because 1 and 2 they do a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then 3, 4, and 5 do a thing, and they're connected to each other, but they're also separate from each other.
Yeah. Because I mean, you kind of wiped the first two stories, off the board, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
can't really. Well, you could, I guess, go back, but otherwise, it's like, no, we've kind of ended that moment in time.
Yeah.
So let's start over new stories in this moment of time.
Yeah, you know, going back to what I was saying earlier, you know, one thing when I was a kid that I didn't like as much about this one is, it's not like the Planet of the Apes, the movie that I love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, at the time, I hadn't seen the second one. But what I like now as an adult is that each of the sequels is completely different from the others.
Mm.
And they're all, you know, none of them. I mean, okay, the second one kind of spends about like 20 minutes just replaying the first one, but then it's off doing its own thing, and you got underground mutants and whatever. It's a little bit gonzo, and that's fine. But it's doing something totally different, you know? And then this one is doing something totally different. And then the fourth one is visually and tonally totally different. And that's what I like. They by virtue of this was a series where each movie made less than the previous one, but since they cost less, each of them was profitable.
Well, and I also saw that each one opened at number one, all 5.
Yeah.
Because, so, I mean, the interest was always there.
The interest was there, and it was, you know, these were family films, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like with the newer films, right? All of them have done well. The Caesar trilogy, they've done well, but not so well that the studio would have got its mitts into everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They found like this baseline of success where it's like, okay, just do your thing.
Yeah. Whatever you're doing is working well enough for us to be happy about it. So just keep doing your thing.
Yeah. You know, and obviously neither of us has seen the new one. I certainly hope it's good, but it's always like, you know, there's an undercurrent of sadness and darkness to the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it works best when it always hangs on to that.
Yeah, I get that.
You know, these are not happy stories, feel good stories. They shouldn't be anyway.
Mm-hmm.
They should be exciting and captivating, but there should be a part of you that feels something of a gut punch.
Right, because they're kind of cautionary tales, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and that starts with the very first one, and it carries right through to the end.
Mm-hmm. You know, thinking of these sequels and how you're saying that each film is different, it makes me think about franchise filmmaking today.
Yeah.
And people say what makes them so difficult is you want more of the same, but then if you get the same, you're not happy. But if you try to make it different, then you're not happy because it doesn't feel like the thing that you like. And you can see that, you know, with Star Wars even, you know, Force Awakens feeling like it has to repeat A New Hope and that sort of thing. And I wonder if you could go back in time. I mean, culture was obviously different, but if there was an internet culture, you know, back when these movies were coming out, if people would be like, not my apes, you know, like because
Yeah.
this one is so different and that one is so different. Or if it was just exciting to see the kernel that you enjoyed, which is humanoid apes and what
Yeah.
that means in different contexts, and you were just happy to see them in different stories, no matter how varied they
Right.
were.
I should say, by the way, real quick, these little snippets that we get from the first film, I remember as a kid just like being excited by that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that thing. I've seen that thing, you know?
Yeah.
No, but I think for me, that undercurrent of uh the dark underbelly of the story is, as long as that's there, then it works to me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are stories about human beings ultimately being subjugated as either slaves or animals.
Mm-hmm.
And it was marketed at a family audience. I've said to you before, my first exposure to this franchise really was the cartoon show.
Mm-hmm.
And it left a mark on me, you know.
I mean,
The shot that we just saw with Landon having been lobotomized, I remember, boy, I'll tell you, that did a number on me when I was a kid. You know,
I bet.
I think I said this to you. I was watching this with one of my kids a while ago, and that part in the earlier film, he's like, "Can you skip past this?"
Mm.
And it's not like he knows what a lobotomy is,
Mm-hmm. He just
but he
knows
knew
it's-
enough to be like, "This makes me uncomfortable," you know.
Yeah.
But then with Heston kissing Zira, he was like, "Can you rewind that? Pause it." I was like, "That's a little weird."
Yeah. That's really funny. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just yeah. You know what I don't miss about the sort of 60s, 70s suits is the vests. Never
Yeah.
understood the vests. That makes me think of like my dad going to work in the early 80s.
Right?
Oh, by the way, this is just random and means nothing to anyone. But the character here, I think he's the news anchor. His name's Bill Bonds.
Mhm.
That was my dad's boss's name when I was a kid. Bill
Wow.
Bonds. Literally, Bill Bonds. And I remember he would we'd go over to his house sometimes and I was like, Bill Bonds? Like, it made me perk up last night.
For all you know, the character in the movie is named after your dad's old boss because he saved Paul Dane's life at one
Right.
time, and there's the whole backstory you don't know anything about.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah.
I think I mentioned earlier I really like the Lewis and Stevie characters, you know, and I think to some extent Lewis is like a surrogate for us in the audience
Mm-hmm.
in the feeling of helplessness,
Yeah.
right? Where he's observing all of this and yet there's nothing he can do to stop what's happening, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, you know, the way in which Zira's words are used against her
Mm-hmm.
to make it, oh, she's committed what we would call atrocities.
Right.
And yet it completely look at the look on
I know.
Hasline's face, right? He's so pleased with himself.
He's convinced them.
Yeah, you know, and yet it's like, well, objectively, given what we saw in the earlier films, she was the one who was showing kindness to humans, you know.
Right.
So I mean, that's the ironic thing in all of this is what we're seeing here. The council's decision to have the baby aborted. That's the chain reaction that leads to the apes taking over.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, this is pretty heavy. I was like, that's a great cut, by the way.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe
That, in fact, when I think about it, that was the first time in my life I noted like a cut on motion, like a match cut on motion.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I know there's revered cuts like Lawrence of Arabia and things like that. But if I had to make like a top 10, 15 cuts, I'd put that in there. That
It works, right?
For people not watching along, it was basically the chairman slamming down a gavel, and then it cut to Cornelius's fist hitting the table due to the reaction of their ruling.
So you watching this, like you mentioned earlier, is your first time seeing this film.
Mm-hmm.
So you had no sort of expectations about the story.
No, none. I had no idea what this was going to be about.
So that's interesting because you mentioned how you ended up watching it in parts. did you were you tracking? Does the like I would say probably like right around here is where the story takes another turn. Were you like, whoa, how did we end up here kind of
This
thing? Or
is
were you?
no, this is literally, I think, where I stopped.
Oh, how funny.
About right
Okay.
here. And it's like one of those things I kind of regretted later because it did feel jarring. Both parts that I saw are so different from one another. Like I saw a lot of let's hang out in LA, kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, this movie's just kind of a romp.
Yeah.
And then of course, yeah, it all leads to this. And it was in doing my sort of research for this commentary and going over the movie again in my mind. I was like, oh wow. Like, I got to piece it together and wish I had seen it all together the first time.
That's funny.
Because it does feel all of a piece.
Yeah.
That's crazy too, by the way, that guy.
Yeah. That's what happens, man. Don't hit people in faces with trays. That's the takeaway.
That was another one where I didn't clock that he had died yet. And then they show the back, like his opened back of his head. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's my one takeaway. Even when I was a kid, I was like, well, one thing this movie taught me, if you're pissed off, don't smack him with the tray because you don't know where that shit gonna end up,
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think the way Dane approached the story is very deliberate, where he wants to lull the audience into like, this is fine, this is great, and then it should feel just as much of whiplash for us as for the characters,
Totally agree. Yep. And it feels we're shocked, but we're also not shocked in a weird sort of way. But we're endeared to these characters, and then it's sad to see what, for a minute, they felt like they were a part of society. Like, wow, they welcomed us. But then you have that kernel of fear, and then it grows and grows and grows, and then now we have them on the run. And then in a minute, they ask for a handgun. Yes. Because they're like, if we don't want to be taken alive. And you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that the undercurrent of this entire series is man's inhumanity to man. Mm-hmm. Right. And obviously the apes are a surrogate for whatever minority group you want to put in there. But we have this unerring capacity to look past our commonalities and find the differences.
Right.
I mean, think about the fact that 4 years ago, you had Asian people being attacked on the streets.
Right.
Because of a virus that originated half a world away.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing is Planet of the Apes can be set 2,000 years in the future, but it feels a lot closer than that,
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's disheartening. You think we're evolving.
Yeah.
And then you just keep getting reminded that, I don't know. It just keeps repeating it. History keeps repeating itself.
I mean, that's when you think about it. I mean, the original film, which is now 56 years old. I mean, what is the message at the end when Heston is crumpled in front of the Statue of Liberty, right? We destroyed ourselves. And you say, oh, well, that's a commentary on nuclear war and, Vietnam and all this stuff. And it's like, that's true. But what's changed? Like, what's changed to make that ending any less plausible as an eventuality?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think for me, I don't know what it says about me that Planet of the Apes is my favorite movie of all time. E.T. is your favorite movie of all time. And I'm like, man, if there's anything that describes our personalities, it
I mean, I'm not commenting on your point of view at all, but I mean, yeah, I guess that is the belief I want to have, that if someone needed help, there are some people that can represent the best of us and help that person, even though they're different, and even though there's opposition, they'll be willing to go the extra mile to help that person in need. And I know we're not all like that. So to me, it's aspirational.
Right.
I don't think the world is that way, but I think a lot of the world is that way. Not enough, but I wish that those people would, I wish there were more.
Well, what I've said about E.T., and I think I said this in our commentary track, that's a movie, ultimately, it's about trust. and trust being rewarded, because it's about the circle of trust, and every time that circle is increased, it's rewarded.
Right.
Starts with Elliot and then Michael and it keys by the end, but everybody is right. So it's a very heartwarming story in that regard,
Yeah.
I think the Apes films in their own way are about trust, but it's about how we're unwilling to trust.
Right. Right. But if you want to even have some sort of, I don't know if hope's the right word, but like there's a lesson that you can extract for them. Like you can learn, like this is like behavior to learn from watching this example, this story. Like,
yeah,
let's not be like this. We're capable of this. Let's not be like this.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I think, basically the point that we're up to now, I mean, it's extraordinary because the film is about a little over 90 minutes, but they pack a lot of story in there. I mean, it doesn't feel skimpy, but it feels like, they found the right length to tell the story they're telling, but it's definitely something that really, thanks to the richness of the writing, you feel like you get a meal out of it, even though it's relatively short.
Yeah. It makes me so sad too. I mean, that's sort of the point. Like you have these visitors and they're welcomed.
Yeah.
For the first part, and now to just see them in a world they don't know.
That's right.
On the run, and there's nowhere safe for them.
And when you think about it, I mean, they're being saddled with the blame for something that they had nothing to do with. Number one. Right. Above and I mean, literally in the sense of like they say, she says chimpanzees are pacifists. We didn't go to war. We didn't know what happened. But beyond that, I mean, it's they happen to live 2,000 years from now. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's it. That's the mistake they made. And it's like, we have to kill you.
Right.
Because you're from that time. Not because you caused it, not because you led to humans being enslaved. They had nothing to do with it. They just happened to be there.
Yep.
Right?
They're like Batman and Batman v Superman. If there's even a chance that this guy could, can't be trusted. We got to take him out.
It's like, no, that's terrible. It is if there's a 1% chance. It's like, what are you, insane? One thing about this film, it's sad to watch and realize like almost everybody you're seeing on screen has passed away.
Yeah.
And there's something weird about that, like
I get that. Yeah. Yeah.
Like Eric Braeden, I think he's still around. I think he's still on whatever sitcom he was, soap opera he was on, which he's been. I'm curious, actually. What's the show? Young and the Restless.
That's still on?
Still going, I think.
Wow.
Let me see. Hold on. The Young and the Restless is, well, I'll be damned. Yes, it is still going.
Wow.
And he has been on it since, I am curious. Uh, 1980. Think about that.
My lifetime.
Yeah, he's been on that show
for as long
all
as
your
I've
life.
Been alive. That's incredible. Incredible.
Wow. Yeah, listen to this. This is in October of 2009, Braeden and the Young and the Restless came to an impasse regarding contract negotiations. Press reports indicated he might leave the show. CBS later announced that Braeden had inked a new 3-year deal and would remain with the show, agreeing to a reduction in salary, which was the original issue. And he's still on it. So
good for him.
As I always say, if you know what you're worth, go out and get what you're worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Ricardo Montalban here, who is terrific in this film. He comes back in the next one.
Oh.
And he really is kind of the conscience of the movie, you know? But Montalban is another one of those guys. I mean, he's just such a vibrant personality.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You can't help but find him sympathetic,
Yeah, and he's magnetic. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but what's kind of nice about him is he's not he's not weighing things
Mhm.
like the others are. Like, well, if this means that, then maybe we should let them live. He's just like, no, man. Like, people are people's people.
Yep.
Oh, kind of. That's his attitude, right?
Yep. So here's another one of those instances where the budget restraints are a little obvious when you look at the mom ape there.
Yeah.
Not looking so great, but I think they smartly keep her Heloise. They keep her in the shadows so you
Yes.
can't notice
Yeah.
too much that she looks lousy.
That's really funny. I was wondering if that little monkey
Yeah.
was like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
Because it's like, it's a real, that is a monkey, right? Or is it a,
I think so. Yeah, the baby.
yeah, or ape or gorilla. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
don't say monkey, man. Didn't the movie teach you anything? That's
he said
racist.
it's a bad word. I know. But I mean, like being,
God, you're just as bad as Dr. Hassline, Brian.
but I mean, that's what I heard someone say once, animals don't know they're in movies. Like that horse doesn't know he's in Braveheart. You know what I mean? He's just like living his life and seeing all this crazy stuff. So like this cute little monkey, like looking around, there's lights, there's a camera, and there's like something that looks like his mom, but isn't quite his mom.
Yeah, right.
You just gotta wonder what's going through its mind.
It'd be funny if the baby ape learned to talk because of Kim Hunter saying mama, and then that's the ape that ends up taking over the earth.
Yes, because of these films. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, yes.
Right?
Damn you! 20th Century Fox!
Now, worth mentioning, this movie is directed by Don Taylor, who was primarily a TV director. At this point, the budgets were so low they could only really get TV directors. But he talked about how, and it's funny because he appeared in the 30th anniversary documentary about the making of the Apes series, which premiered in fall of '98, and that documentary, which is terrific, was kind of like the last chance to get a lot of these people on the record, before they started to pass away. And Don Taylor literally died 4 months after that documentary.
Wow. Oh man!
But he talked about how for him this was a love story, and the best love stories always end tragically.
I love that.
Right? And there is sort of the tragic inevitability as the story progresses, where again, as we're saying, it's like, oh, but for this, oh, but for that, oh, they could have gone with Armando, oh, they could, all this stuff that might have happened, except for just these quirks of fate,
Yeah, that's true.
So the Armando character is a parallel in some ways to the James Franco character in Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Right, because he adopts the baby who who becomes Caesar, and Caesar learns empathy and kindness from his human father. Right.
I need to rewatch those. I've probably only seen them once, and
the Caesar films.
Yeah. Sorry, the most recent ones, and I enjoyed them, but they don't, I don't remember all the details of them really.
I think because I've just recently rewatched the first two, and then I'll be checking out the third one again this coming weekend. I think it's remarkable how narratively and creatively cohesive that trilogy is. It starts strong, it ends strong. I mean, I would put it up there with the Dark Knight trilogy.
Oh wow.
The Lord of the Rings trilogy, as just, you've got 3 great films here. You've got a solid story with the beginning, middle, and end. You will be satisfied by this, Now, even Rise of the Planet of the Apes was not directed by Matt Reeves, so it's not like there's one creative voice throughout all 3, which makes it even more remarkable what they were able to achieve. Really,
Yeah. And those led him to Batman.
Yeah, exactly. So this moment here, we realize this is where Zira switches the baby. So really, that poor
I know.
that poor kid, you know.
I swear I was not. I was like, okay, so what? Did she take like a stuffed animal from the zoo or like what? What? Oh no.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and who's to say which life is worth more than the other? You know?
I mean that. Yeah, I mean seriously, you know.
Yeah, that was. This is a very very heavy ending.
Yeah, I mean, you have one of our main characters literally saying, "We want to commit suicide. Give us the means to commit suicide."
Mm-hmm.
And there's no attempt to talk them off the ledge.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Lewis is a vet, so he's not like he's a cop. He happens to have a gun on him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He's like, I thought you might ask, so I brought this pistol.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah, that'd be funny. Instead, he brings like a hammer. He's like, well, I thought you might want to, in case you considered taking your own lives, I brought something for you. And then he's like, it's not a gun, it's like a hammer or something. oh.
You should do it to her first. And,
right. Yeah. Damn, like, don't you have like a capsule I can,
yeah,
chew
cyanide?
Cyanide, yeah.
No. Here on Earth in 1973, hammer. We use hammers.
I feel like I'm getting that from somewhere and I don't remember where. Anyway. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just tragic.
Yeah, I mean, this is the last time that these characters see each other.
Yeah.
And definitely when they show up at the end, I mean, it's really it's like, it feels like a gut punch every time, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, what do you think they would be if they were captured? Well, they're going to kill the kid, apparently, I guess.
Yeah.
But what they say, they're going to sterilize them, right? They didn't say they're going to kill them, but
sterilize
I guess
them.
You don't know what really they're going to do. I mean, they're probably going to put them, tests and experiments and.
Well, we see, earlier in the film, Lewis is having that conversation with Hassline, and Lewis says, Zero wants her baby, and Hassline's like, well, I want it too. He's like, yeah, but dead. Well, he says, hey, you'd prefer the parents dead too. And he's like, and he's non-committal, but by implication, especially now that they're accused of killing the orderly,
right?
They would be put down, right?
See, that's what's always I've found so crazy about, like, if you capture an alien, they're going to dissect it. It's like, why would you do that? I mean, wouldn't you want to? I feel like you could have so much more to learn from a living specimen than
yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, the essence of this series is to interrogate the idea that we are at the top of the food chain, and sort of how fleeting that position can be. Why do we assume that we will always be that way, right?
Yeah, and the depravity we're willing to lower ourselves to preserve that.
Yeah, it's there's an episode of The Twilight Zone called "People Are Alike All Over," and it stars Roddy McDowall, actually.
Oh,
and he plays an astronaut who he's worried about what's going to happen when they go off into space, and his fellow astronauts like, I think we'll be all right. People are alike all over, and then they end up landing on this other planet. They crash. His co-pilot dies, and he finds these people who are like, no, come live with us. It's fine. It'll be great. We'll take care of you. And then it turns out he's in like a zoo, essentially, like a human in his own environment. It's like a house that he can never leave, And it's like, because people are like all over. And a very, like, that's such a Twilight Zone thing.
Yeah.
It's also very Ben Stiller show, bad twist ending theater.
Right.
And then, of course, you put Roddy McDowall in the Charlton Heston role, essentially,
Right.
But that tells you something. Rod Serling was very cynical about humanity.
Yeah.
Which is reflected throughout Twilight Zone. It's obviously reflected in Planet of the Apes. I think Paul Dane shared that cynicism.
Sure.
But I think it was a cynicism born of human experience, having lived through some of the worst moments of human history in the
Mhm.
early part of the 20th century,
Mhm.
in terms of, the Holocaust and dropping the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the things that we've done to other people.
Right.
And that's something that, if you stop and think about the sheer breadth of inhumanity we display to other people, it feels overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
I know.
And that's hard. I mean, I grapple with this all the time because I tell my kids all the time, look, just no matter what, you don't have to remember anything else, just be kind. Just be
Mhm.
kind. That's it. Just
Yep.
make people's day better, not worse. That's it. And I feel like that's the message ultimately that a movie like this, which is, again, it's going to a dark place. That's what it's trying to say. Look, just show kindness,
Mhm.
whether it's a person or a creature.
Yep.
What do you lose by being kind?
Yeah.
I mean,
Far too often.
the what Hassline, his frustration. What if in 2,000 years we are hunted like animals, and you have Armando saying, "Okay, so what?"
Mm-hmm.
And the movie's saying, "Well, who are you?
Yep.
Where do you land on this spectrum?"
Yeah. 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 He's a very well, if that's the way things go, then that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And then at the very least, I hope the people, the apes, are as kind as you. Just
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the ironic thing, is that you watch the earlier films. I mean, the chimpanzees are the ones nobody listens to. They're the pacifists.
Mm-hmm.
They're the scientists, and everybody ignores them. So everything that happens is because of the elites and the military.
Yeah.
And I mean, bear in mind, these films were coming out in the midst of Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And protests on campus and things like that, and the sense among the youth that their voices were not being heeded, right? So it is weird how history rhymes, if nothing else,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good. It's nice when art can interrogate those things,
Exactly.
and we can be forced to. That's what's so great. People bring up a lot about sci-fi is you are able to take concepts from humanity, but if you were to just tell it literally, it might be too recognizable and you might already have an opinion formed. But if you can put it in another skin,
Yes,
you might be able to step back a little bit and see things a little differently, and then be able to relate that to the human experience.
yeah, and I honestly, I mean, I think that's where the longevity of these films comes from. I truly believe that. I think if it was just about, let's watch a popcorn movie for a couple hours, I don't think people would be talking about these films 50 plus years later.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And I think, honestly, Brian, I think the proof of that is the fact that the Tim Burton film did not spawn its own little franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Because people didn't plug into that film except on sort of a superficial level.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, I occasionally forget it exists. That Tim Burton made a
right.
Planet of the Apes movie. I forget.
Not just that, you and I talked through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's because of what I'm saying, right? I that movie was the surface level. Oh, Planet of the Apes. Yeah, but what is it about?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Planet of the Apes is not about a planet of apes. It's about something deeper.
Mm-hmm. I just find this ending so sad. I mean, obviously the ending, but just the third act.
Yeah.
These incredibly nice, characters, and just she's just like, man, this place stinks. Right? Look at what we're reduced to with our child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something there about how oftentimes we're subject to events that we just have no control over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately it comes down to, well, the only thing we can control is who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And how we act,
Yeah.
I mean, Cornelius did not mean to kill that person. but him and Zira are still the same people.
Mm-hmm.
They're still kind. They're still empathetic. Meanwhile, Dr. Hassline, who starts the film as a, scientifically inquisitive person, becomes a murderous zealot by the end.
He's consumed with an idea now.
Yeah. I mean that.
Oh yeah, sorry. You're
No, like that sense of like this thing 2,000 years from now that he won't even be around for,
right,
and
right.
it just destroys him,
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying?
No, sorry. I was going back to a scene that had just happened that is sticking in my mind now more than it did last night. Is when they're on the run and it looks like they're on like Mulholland Drive or something, and they're looking into the valley and they see all the lights. And Cornelius is like, "Oh wow, it looks like stars. Like it's beautiful." And it's like he can still sort of admire the world, but she's like, "Yeah, it's beautiful from up here." Like, they can't be in it. Like
right.
they're looking at the world and like it is beautiful, but like we can't be a part of that.
Yeah,
it's so
that's
sad.
Really something.
It's a beautiful little scene. You can almost imagine them cutting it, but it's just so. It really says a lot in a very small moment.
Yeah.
That monkey is so.
The monkey's like, what is happening here? He just woke up. He's like, you're not my mom.
Yeah, I know.
That's the thing that's so interesting is like little baby chimpanzees are so adorable that people get it in their heads like, oh, I'm going to raise this.
Yeah.
And it's like, they hit a certain age and they will tear you the F up.
Yes.
I mean,
I know. It's so tempting. It looks like they'd be such like a fun pet.
Yeah.
No.
And they're fun up to a point, man. But after that, watch out. Leave them alone. That's the lesson,
You know what it made me think of when you were saying like the actual monkey actor looking around is like a Garth when he's like, it's it looks like Wayne's basement, but this isn't Wayne's basement. Isn't that weird? Like, I'm thinking that's what he's thinking as he's looking at this woman with like chimpanzee makeup on her face. Like, it looks like my mom.
What's amazing is that apes are just human looking enough for us to project our, feelings and things onto them. And that's like, but they're animals, man. Their experience of this world is totally different from anything related to ours,
Totally.
I mean, shit, I go through that with my cat, he'll be sitting next to me and he's just looking around, he's doing his thing. I'm like, what is going on in his mind,
I know. Oh boy.
See, to me, it's like, what does it take to be the type of person who's like, give me your baby so I can kill it?
I know.
Right. And I think, I think the movie, it needed to be about Cornelius and Zira. That's really the only way to make this ending hit the way it's supposed to hit.
Agreed. Agreed. But it's like they are clearly, and I think the movie even goes almost the extra mile to portray them as these completely benign people. They are so kind. They are so nice.
Right.
Overly nice.
Yep.
And then just to see that this idea, because I just rewatched Inception, I guess that's why I'm thinking of it this way. But like an idea was planted in his mind.
Yep.
Well, by himself. But it will not let go. He can't let go of that idea. It's taken hold and it's growing. And now it's led to him being willing to like shoot some of the nicest people he's probably ever met because the idea is too strong.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the fact that he runs and hides, he knows he's doing something wrong.
Yeah. Right.
It isn't like, oh, they're here. Come on. No. He knows he's going to get in trouble for this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but those are like the best villains, right? I mean, I know the quintessential example is Ed Harris in The Rock.
Yes.
Where it's like, wow, he's not necessarily wrong in what he's thinking about, what he's trying to achieve, but he's going about it in all the wrong ways. He's concerned. Yeah. This guy is concerned about humanity's future. Nothing wrong with that. But the way that he's going about it, the way he's approaching it, and what he's willing to do is all wrong.
Right. I think this is the dilemma when you have sort of Johnny Mustache Twirler villains where they're so comically over the top that you sort of say, well, why would somebody act that way? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's always the trick with writing. It's like I said earlier, they have to be the protagonist of their story.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't set out to be evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, this right here, man. I remember seeing this the first time as a kid, and just my stomach got caught in my throat.
I mean, we're literally seeing squibs go off on a little
On a baby.
swaddled baby. I was shocked. I was shocked.
Really, in a G-rated movie.
Yeah.
And again, what I said before, Louis and Stevie, they're the surrogates for us. When she's like, "My God, stop him!" That's us. Like, we feel powerless to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that shot right there, the close up of Roddy McDowell, the way he blows the air out of his cheeks there. But I mean, that stayed with me as that's this character who I know him, I like him,
Mm-hmm.
and you just see the life drain out of his eyes at that moment.
Yeah. Now, did she throw the baby in the water so they can't have it even in death? Is that what's going on here?
I always wonder about that. I assume that, but it's not like they wouldn't be able to reclaim him,
Yeah.
I don't know, to be honest. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the way she just collapses on top of him and then the camera pulls away. I mean, it's so beautiful and sad and just, I mean, I don't know. What a powerful image right there.
Yeah. Man, I can't believe I haven't done it yet, but I just enjoy these movies so much. I'm glad I have 2 more to go in this whole
Oh, that's
series.
great.
Yeah. I'm just so curious where they go from here.
Yeah. Well, so this one now remember, the first 2 were each intended as one-offs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So number 1 definitely, and then number 2, well, we're done now. This one, okay, hey, people might want to keep coming. So they left enough thread to pick up on. But the nice thing is that if this is the end of the show, well, that's a good place to leave it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right. Now, this technology is hilarious now because it's very apparent they're just winding the film back and forth,
Yeah.
Oh, honestly, what I love is how even as we fade to black, we just hear the plaintive cries of the baby, "Mama!" Like,
yeah.
That is very haunting. It stays with you,
Yep.
And again, right? This is an ape whose parents were brutally murdered by human society, but he gets to grow up raised by a human. What does that make him? And that's what the next film gets into.
Oh, interesting. Man, I mean, I know we'll eventually get to a commentary for that, but I'm sure I will check it out before then because I gotta know.
Yeah, and that's the remarkable thing is the whole notion of with each one we will spend less. That's completely counterintuitive given how sequels work today.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet, weirdly, that's what kept the ape train rolling for 5 movies.
Right.
Right. Now, by the time they got to the 5th one, they had like $10 and a pack of chewing gum to make it. I think it showed. Right. But certainly for this one, and then the next one also, which, as I mentioned, they shot it in the Century City Mall, and it had just been built as brand new. So there was a whole lot of, they didn't have to spend anything,
Yeah, yeah.
On construction. They just used the location. It helped. So they were able to work within their limitations. But I think, as I said, here we are. It's been, 53 years since this movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
And if nothing else, just by virtue of being part of that 5-part cycle, it gets to be revisited constantly.
Mm-hmm. And it still has something to say. It's still, I still feel like a modern audience today could still take something away from this. Needs to take something away from this.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think, and as I said throughout this discussion, I mean, I think that's the secret. That's the secret of the Planet of the Apes, the original title. it's about telling stories that delve into the complexities of the human experience,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that we're capable of great goodness, but also great evil, and that every single one of us contains the capacity for both.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what do we want to be?
Right.
Sorry if that's it's like going to a dark place.
I mean, that's what we just went through here for the past 90 minutes. I think it's appropriate. Yeah.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you for watching this film with me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad we did because like I said, I think we watched Beneath the Planet of the Apes, a couple of years ago or something. And I said the very same thing, like, oh, these are good. I'm going to keep going. And then I didn't do it. So I like that these keep me accountable. They force me to keep going because I love them. And then, I get distracted or something. And then I want to see these. These are great excuses to watch them.
Well, hopefully we'll be back soon to talk through Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. That's the next one in the series. I don't know when that'll happen. I mean, Beneath we did 4 years ago.
Okay.
So hopefully it won't be another 4 years.
Yeah, well, one presumes there'll be a sequel to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
There you go. So that'll give us our incentive to do that.
Yeah.
But luckily, there's lots of apes to revisit. So this is a sojourn I expect will continue in times to come, unless it becomes a Planet of Apes in the interim.
Well, hopefully this will be a record that will put us on good terms with
our ape overlords.
Our new ape overlords. Yeah.
Well, with that, hey, let us know your thoughts on not only Escape from the Planet of the Apes, but our thoughts on Escape from the Planet of the Apes. You can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. Please go to Apple Podcasts, leave a review. If you like what we're doing, leave a star rating. Every little bit helps, and we love that. And with that, I will bring down the curtain on this commentary, but we will be back with our next regular show as well as our next commentary track. So on behalf of my partner, Brian Hall, my name is Zaki Hassan. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will catch you next time.